Part 3, Volume 1, Das Kapital. The Part 3 is called the production of absolute surplus value, and in this part, which is very extended from chapter 7 to chapter 11, and in this part Karl Marx points out and he made a lot of distinctions in this part, and he talks about labor process and valorization process. Labor process is when the labor process is a process when labor is converting something that is found in nature, something that is natural, into something that has a use value that can be moved through economies and certainly have a universal use value. And then he talks about the valorization process. Now the labor process is certainly that can be found in anywhere, even in the any kind of economy, even primitive, advanced, or not even that advanced. So that is something that is common to economies automatically. But then he talks about the valorization process, and valorization process is a capitalist process where a product has a value after its conversion, and certainly that was also done by labor, but now it has more value than it should have, or something there is more absurdity to the value of the commodity, and which doesn't necessarily speaks about the labor, but of the commodity itself. And then he talked about the constant variable and the constant capital and the variable capital. So the constant capital is something you can think of constant capital as a machine that you're using for your production, or tools that you are using, or equipment of any kind that you are using for the production or the process, and the variable capital is something that is not constant. And example of that is wages that you are giving to the laborers, and which is something that is common, something that is commonsensical, and something that you can understand without Karl Marx pointing that out to you. But one thing he points out is that the increase of value of a commodity or a product is not necessarily because of the constant capital. It is because of the variable capital, and that variable capital is the labor. And he points out that a machine can convert something, it can transform one thing into another thing, but it's not necessarily creating new things. Machine is not creating a new thing. It's just transferring. It can transfer, but the person, the entity that is creating the new product is the labor. And he talks about that it is because of the labor, it is because of the variable capital that is something new is being created, and something the new that is being introduced in the economy, not by constant capital but by variable capital. And then he points out to the surplus value, and the surplus value is dependent on the exploitation of the labor and lengthening of the hours they are putting in a production or a process, or wherever they're working. So surplus value is created. For example, if I'm paying somebody, if I'm paying somebody and I'm taking more from him, because somebody is paying somebody let's just say X value of X value, and getting more from, it's not so he's saying that labor, the wages that you're giving to to the labor are not equal to the time duration or the lengthening of work he's putting for you. So, and which is sort of absurd, and who can measure that? And I think I'm here trying to expand the point of the Karl Marx, and is saying that there's ambiguity in this all, and how somebody can tell how much one should get paid, because which is very absurd, because who knows how one should be getting paid. And it is very a big problem at the time Karl Marx was living, because these whole concepts of modern policymaking were not there, and he certainly was not seeing any of that. And he's saying that somehow this whole ambiguity is becoming the cause of exploitation of labor, and because you are taking more work from him than you're giving him the money or the wages for those work he's doing for you. And he's talking about that, and this whole section talks about how that exploitation of labor and the lengthening of the hours is making a profit for a capitalist or an industrialist, and they are adding more value, and they are adding more value, but they are not getting paid themselves, but that profit or that surplus is going to the capitalist or industrialist. This is certainly something that Karl Marx is saying here. And the one thing that is very I think I should point it out, when Karl Marx is writing this book, industrialization at what it was at its peaks. It was certainly the most the biggest revolution our ancestors have ever saw. Like they were those people who came from pure agricultural class, and agricultural class is also there today, but those were the people who have less and less of machinery, and they were so-called modern, but they didn't have the machinery. But when the industrial revolution came, and the invention of steam engines and everything, then the production and the industry production became very gigantic and very something that humans haven't thought before, like something very big and massive. But and with that suddenly came the exploitation of the laborers and these things. And Karl Marx certainly would have seen this somewhere personally, because he's the one thing that is common throughout the analysis of Das Kapital, certainly as far as I've got is he's talking about labor more and more, and he's saying that the economy is nothing without the labor. And in this book he's talking about capitalist economy, and he's saying that the most important entity in this, he's not directly pointing that out, but something that I'm sensing, and he is pointing that out, but what I'm sensing is saying that labor is the most important entity in the production of anything, and production is the foundation of economy. So he's saying that labor is the most fundamental thing and the most significant thing in an economy. And so as I've said, that if you read, this is something common that you can find in. At the same time, those exploitation were also in United States, in England, because certainly Charles Dickens was writing about that in in his books, and if you read those books, and you will certainly see that the worker class is getting affected by this. And if you read American literature a little bit, and you will also feel that same way. And that at that point in time, it was something very big. This was one of the problems the society was facing, that people were getting exploited. And there is in the last century, the last half of 19th century, there is an anecdote of Theodore Roosevelt, who became the youngest president of the United States of America. And there is actually a story about him, that he was against this law, which somehow would give workers some sort of rights that they can enjoy. And as there was a bill in the Senate, or in the congressman, one of the houses in US, and he was against the bill. And then somebody took him to those ghettos and to those neighborhoods where those poor people were living, who could not even meet a day's end. They didn't have the means for that. And Roosevelt saw that, and he was certainly moved by that, and he made his life a platform for those voices. And he signed the bill, and he was in the favor of the bill. And so that was certainly the case. And if there are even anecdotes that in those industries, even children who are being employed, the children's, and that is certainly by employing more and more, and taking more and more people, and giving them less and less wages, and taking more and more hours for them, it is the ultimate way for creating the most and most profit for the industries. So that was certainly. And Karl Marx, now these ideas can be viewed as that Karl Marx could be a voice for those people, for the worker class. And he's certainly somebody who, if you read, and if you're familiar with the policy, the core policies of many countries is the minimum wage, which is certainly, I think that's something that has its roots in the analysis of Karl Marx. Not just there, but certainly some roots there. And the country of Europe has this among European nations of the minimum wage. And at least people should have minimum wage, so that they can meet day's end, and they can sustain with more things, that they should be able to afford more things and have the basic means. So it is certainly something that is being pointed out, and the labor is a very important part of Karl Marx analysis.